First impressions are always so hard, you guys. I don't even know how many takes I've done already, but I'm going to be real with you guys. This is my podcast, all right? This is my story. Now, I feel like it's a very unique story. My experience being raised Mormon and just me being socially introverted my whole life and being scared all the time and feeling like I'm different. And that's my story. And I know there's a lot of people that choose to listen to this podcast will agree with me or disagree with me, and that's okay. But my story is my story. It happened. It's real. And I want to share it. I feel like it's very unique. And this podcast deals with my experience being raised a Mormon. Now, this podcast could be for people that are Mormon or have never been Mormon or have no idea what Mormon is. But this is what I experienced. This is what really happened to me, both good and bad. I want to share the good and bad. I don't want this podcast to be just me grinding an axe and talking about how horrible the church is and how it screwed me up and made me have social anxiety and depression and self-hate my whole life. No, there's good things in the church as well that I experienced, and I want to share both of them. This is my story. So that's what to expect. Now, if you're a true believer Mormon, true Latter-day Saint who believes the church is true, that's okay. If you choose to listen to this podcast, I don't recommend it, but you can do what you want. I don't care. This podcast is mostly for people who have never been a Mormon, or they are and they're transitioning out, or they're feeling like they're different and they suffer with depression and anxiety issues. This podcast is for those kind of people. And I'm not trying to use this podcast to destroy the church and take it out, but I'm trying to share my story. I think everyone has a unique story in their life that deals with these kind of things, and everyone should have a chance to share their story. And this is what this podcast is. This is me sharing a story, and I want it to have a little bit of comedy as well. I have a bunch of funny stories to share, and I also have a bunch of stories that kind of just pissed me off, and I felt like it was unfair, but it's just how life is. Life isn't fair, but life is a learning experience. And I want to treat it like that as well. So yeah, what to expect from this podcast. This is just an introduction episode. So what this podcast is going to be, the first section of this podcast, so the next episode after this is phase 1, my faith crisis. Now the next episode, the first part of this podcast, we'll talk about the beginning of my faith crisis. So when I decided that Mormonism is not what I expected. I'm 40 years old now, and I was early 30s when I started having a faith crisis. And that's what this part of the first part of the podcast is going to be. It's going to be the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. Get right to business. Right into the stuff that I imagine a lot of people click on this for. It will talk about my experience working for the church. I spent some time as an employee of the church, and that's when it all kind of unraveled. I'm also a returned missionary, a whole bunch of stuff. And I've experienced a bunch of stuff in the church, and both good and bad. So the first phase of this podcast is going to be my experience transitioning out of it, finding stuff about it that I decided that wasn't for me. I don't know how many episodes that's going to take, but I imagine it's going to be a bunch because I got a lot to say. And then phase 2 is going to be my entire story, my entire childhood, my upbringing in the LDS church. So the first phase is going to be me in my early to mid 40s deciding, Mormonism is not what I thought it was. I don't believe it anymore. And then phase 2 is going to be kind of a flashback from my entire childhood, from the moment I joined the church when I lived in England to the time I moved to Utah and was a strange kid that no one understood and made fun of because I had a weird accent and stuff like that. And then high school, mission, everything else. All the way up, pretty much most of my life, all the way up to where my faith crisis began. And then I don't know how many episodes that's going to be. And then phase 3, I don't know, it could be 100 episodes by this point. Phase 3 is just going to be my thoughts and what I believe today. So I don't know how long this thing's going to last. I might even just do 5 episodes, It's really hard to do these kind of things, It takes a lot out of me, I think. It's just a lot of thoughts. And quite frankly, I've been holding back for a long time during this. I've been wanting to do this for years now, but I've just been too scared to do it because how are people going to respond to this podcast? They're going to grab their pitchforks and flames and try to kill me, because I'm exposing the church for being bad. No, I don't think the church is bad. It just doesn't work for everybody. It didn't work for me, and that's okay. It's not for everybody. And if it does, the church does, the Mormon church, the LDS church, does a lot of good. It does help a lot of people. I still have family that are believers, all right? And they're happy, and that's okay. But the thing is, in my experience in the church, it was squeezing a squared peg in a round hole. It just didn't work for me. And I'm going to explain why. And there's a bad stereotype for people that leave the church or people that are bitter and angry and they want to sin. I know what's good and bad still, even after all these years. And I just want to reveal to the world that that's not why people leave. But it's not all going to be about how much I hate the church and how angry I am at the church, because I've been angry at the church for and I'll talk about it. But this is just a podcast about what it was like for a socially introverted, depressed kid in an extrovert, perfection-driven world. Now, Mormonism is all about perfectionism. It's all about being out there, getting out of your comfort zone and talking to everyone and being social and stuff like that. That was not me. I don't like being social. I don't like talking to people. It's not that I don't like people. I'm terrified of social interactions. And that's how I've always been. And it was really hard on me. And so that's what this podcast is going to be about. This is just an introduction podcast episode. So hope you got it this far. If you're interested, listen to the next episode because I'm going to dive right into my faith crisis. And I don't even know how many episodes they're going to be. But that's what to expect from this podcast. And thanks for listening, and review and rate this podcast if you're interested. If you're just like me, you have social anxiety and depression, this is right up your alley. And so thanks for listening. This was episode 1 of My Mormon Memory. Thank you.